It is springtime, you know. But maybe not spring enough for a lot of us. Ready to get out there and plant or encourage growth in the garden. Now the right time? Well, let's see about that. Coming up in an hour from now, by the way, the Live with Rink show for Wednesday. Just before that, we'll catch up with the folks at Michigan Tile and Carpet in our Ask the Expert segment. Meanwhile, here on Wednesday morning, it's sort of the weekend on Wednesday with the Cowardly Gardener. Bob Coward is with us. You hear him on the Garden Show on Saturday mornings on WBCK. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Thanks for being here today.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
This is, I think, been a mild winter, right?
Been pretty mild so far.
Yeah, from your perspective.
We definitely need a little more colder weather. You know, the snow and cold they're talking this weekend is really what we need.
Why?
Well, it's just all the fruit trees and a lot of the lilacs and things like that are already budding out. And we really don't want that stuff to come out too early because we're likely to get a frost. Now, the last expected frost in this area is typically right around the 25th of May. So, you know, you're talking almost 2 months. That's a long way away. So you really don't want all this stuff coming out and getting ready to bloom in April because, you know, you got probably at least half a dozen or more frosts yet to come.
Boy. Yeah, and so you get past a certain point with budding and such, and you're going to lose that.
That's right. And, you know, with the apple trees and everything, they're still got a little bit of green on them, but they're still inside their buds. So unless we get down to like 5 below, they're perfectly fine.
Okay.
And if it stays cool like this, that'll just push them back that much farther. So if we typically want those things blooming about the first week of May is typically when apple trees and all that stuff bloom. Your lilacs typically go into bloom mid-May, first week of May, depending on the year. So if we can keep them back for another week or two, that would be ideal.
Well, here we are today and tomorrow in the mid-60s, and then we'll start dropping off. Does one day of warmth or cold make a huge difference?
I'd say it's more this time of year. It's more the warmth than the cold.
Okay.
The warmth really brings stuff on. I was actually out doing some pruning yesterday, and I was looking at a lilac, and the buds are really big and green, and they're almost starting to break open, so the flower is starting to appear. So, you know, they take a lot of cold, and they're not quite as touchy as fruit trees and some of these other types of plants, but they're, you know, you really don't want them coming out of those sheaths just yet because it'll make the flower may get some browning around the edge of the flower, or maybe make it so it doesn't last as long when it does finally bloom. So we really want that stuff to be pushed back another week or two.
Yeah. Well, I think we can all relate to that warmth idea because if you walked around your yard a couple of weeks ago and then you walked around again maybe a week ago, you see the difference.
Yeah, I mean, my side yard is really pretty much needs to be mowed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, but it does.
That's interesting you brought that up. I was driving down Columbia yesterday, and there was a lawn crew mowing the lawn at a gas station, and I thought, really? And then I looked at the lawn, and it was green and lush. Well, I guess it's time.
Yeah, and it's, you know, they always tell you that typically when the forsythia bush starts to bloom is when you want to put your crabgrass preventer on. And we had several calls on Saturday about crabgrass preventer. And actually yesterday I was out and the forsythias were just starting to break into yellow flowers. So you could potentially do it now. Be fine next week when we get a little bit warmer weather. But if you want to put your crabgrass preventer on now, that's certainly fine. The soil temperature probably isn't quite 55, but it's pretty close to time to do it. So anytime in the next week to 10 days is going to be about when you want to put your crabgrass preventer down.
All right, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. And if a little snow falls Sunday night into Monday, as some are predicting, will that affect that? We'll discuss that coming up in a minute. It's 8:30. Wednesday, the Cowardly Gardener. Bob Coward is here with us this half hour, heard Saturday mornings on the Garden Show, and WBCK, of course. So we put the crabgrass preventer down now, and then it snows a couple inches on Sunday night, and Monday it's going to melt fairly soon. We presume that would be good to help the fertilizer soak in, right?
Yeah, you got to have some moisture to make it, you know, activate it. And crabgrass, of course, you know, we always talk a lot about the soil temperature being about 55, but one thing that crabgrass does need to germinate is it needs moisture. So we have some good rain coming in this weekend,
Uh-huh.
and then we got some more moisture next week. So, timing is pretty good in the next week or so. That should be perfect if you can get it down. Doesn't have to be today, but if you get it down by tail end of next week, you should have pretty good results.
A couple of my neighbors have those little plastic things in the lawns suggesting that they've had some fertilizer put down already.
Yep.
Is that crabgrass generally?
Most of the time, yes.
Yeah.
Most of the people are putting their crabgrass preventer down. It could have gone on, maybe 10 days ago, but, it's right. We're right in the pocket where we want to put it on, so it's getting pretty close. So, yeah, it's a lot of people have had it done, and, of course, the lawn care companies are, they may have hundreds and hundreds to do, so they got to do it when they can do it.
Trying to get on it. And it's been favorable for that kind of attention, I guess, at this point.
Well, and the thing with it is you never know how the weather's going to shake out. So, I mean, if you put the crabgrass preventer down a week ago and the weather would have stayed warm, would have probably got the early crabgrass. If it stays a little bit cooler, then the crabgrass preventer will sit there and get the stuff that comes on a little later. Because you have about a 8-week window when the crabgrass germinates. So you're really trying to get your crabgrass preventer down at that time. Most of the crabgrass preventers that are out there actually work also in the first leaf stage of the crabgrass. So it actually can have germinated or start to germinate, and it'll still work.
I see. It'll stop it even then.
Yes.
So what is the best approach to fertilizing the lawn? We start with the crabgrass preventer at this stage, and then what?
Well, and you don't necessarily have to put down fertilizer with your crabgrass preventer. A lot of people find that in April and May, you're mowing it. Even if you don't fertilize, you mow like crazy in April and May typically.
Right.
So if you don't want all that extra growth, a lot of people will just put down a straight crabgrass preventer with no fertilizer and then wait until mid to late May to put on a weed and feed, which will give you your fertilizer for summertime. So depends on the type of lawn. I always tell people if you're going to decide what you want to do as far as fertilizer, first determine what number of lawn you want. And I always rate lawns on a scale of 1 to 5.
Okay.
So if 5 is the golf course look, 1 is you just mow it, don't fertilize it, don't water it, don't care. You got to pick your number and then determine your course of action after that. So let's say you want to be at a 2.5 to 3, then maybe, okay, you want to put down just straight crabgrass preventer first in the spring and then do a weed and feed in midsummer and then just do a fall application of fertilizer in October.
Okay.
Some people who want that golf course look may want fertilizer and crabgrass. They may want weed and feed. They may want a summer application. They may want a fall application. They may want fall spraying of weeds. So it just depends on the level of lawn you're looking for.
I know some of those golf course types, and it seems like they're always putting something down.
Yeah, and I know I've known several people like that. Of course, the funny part with it is with me is, of course, I worked at a golf course for 4 years, and I'm about as far from a golf course look type of guy as there is out there. I'm pretty much the one, I just mow it, and that's good enough for me. But some people are very persnickety, and that's okay too. But it's a lot more work to get it up to that level. And I think most people that start out with a lawn, you get new homeowners and people that are maybe just starting on it. They may have an expectation of a 5, but they don't realize what the work involved and the cost involved of a 5 is.
Right.
And a lot of times they find after a year or two that they have to dial their expectations back a little bit. And I've seen that also, where people come in and they go, oh, man, I want the golf course look, and they don't realize they have to mow 5 times a week and water every night and do a lot more work than what they thought they would. And,
that's true.
I'm the type of guy that looks at it and says, now, how much energy do I really want to put into this? Because there may be other things in my life that are slightly more important than mowing an acre and a half of grass.
I have a friend, and he and I have had back and forth about this. Some years I decide I'm taking the year off from mowing, and I'll hire it to be done. And he'll say, you're paying somebody to do that when you can do that yourself. It's about time, pal.
It is. It is.
I don't feel like doing it.
Well,
I'm not gonna do it.
That's where you put the value on your time. I mean,
right.
If you pay somebody whatever, $20 to mow your lawn or whatever, is it worth that $20 to you to be able to go spend time with family or friends or whatever it may be? So, that's the thing. I always tell people, I said this Saturday, people look at a golf course and they go, oh, that really looks nice and that's all great. You don't realize what goes into that.
They have a crew doing that.
Yeah, to make that golf course green look like that, they're mowing that green 6 days a week. And you can't just take a day off because, well, I don't feel like it today. And so there's a lot of work that goes into it. So,
That's very true.
Give the person on the grounds crew a pat on the back the next time you see them.
That's the truth. When we come back in a minute, we'll talk a little bit more about fertilizer and then some other things. How close are we to being able to plant and things like that some of us are itching to do. We'll talk about that coming up in a minute with Bob Coward. 8:22. Bob Coward is here giving us a little preview on spring and, of course, the Garden Show heard on Saturdays on WBCK. We talked about fertilizer. I've used both. I've used the granular kind in the spreader, and I've also used the liquid kind that you can attach to the hose, and I saw results with both. Do you have a preference?
I prefer the granular. Main reason being is that the granular has both fast release and slow release fertilizer.
Got it.
When you're putting down liquid, you get all fast release. Yes, it works, but you got to do it more often. And it's kind of here today, gone tomorrow. Once you mow your lawn once or twice, then basically that fertilizer is used up. Whereas with a granular, you're getting usually some sulfur-coated urea, which will be slow release, and that'll feed for a couple months.
Nice.
So that's the main reason you do it that way.
Well, and I guess it makes sense because it's more work. You get the bag, pour it in the spreader. You know, it's more work to do all that than just connect the hose and have at it. So the reward should be better.
Well, and it's no big deal if you got a small lawn, but if you got, an acre or a big yard, and you're trying to do it with a liquid fertilizer, you're going to spend a lot of time on the end of a hose.
That's true.
That's a lot of work. You'll be out there a lot longer than you ever would with a spreader.
That is true. So some of us would just love to get out there and do something right now, plant or prune or something. What's the thing we should be doing right now?
Well, there's a ton of stuff to do right now.
Yeah.
If you want to get out, this is probably your last opportunity to prune your fruit trees. You were talking, you got fruit trees at your yard, so
right.
You're getting down to the last time to do it. You roughly want to remove about 1/3 of the tree. And you want to open up and you want to open up the center of the tree so you basically don't have crisscrossing branches. You want the open center look so that there's airflow through there. And you always want to prune to branches that grow sideways because branches that grow upward don't generally produce much fruit, if any. And the sideways branches are the one that produce the fruit. So you want to try to remove about the top third of the tree and the branches growing upward, crisscrossing, and taking up the light space in the middle of the tree.
You just gave me my homework assignment.
That's right. And it sounds pretty difficult, but, and I always hear from people, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to kill it. No, you're not.
Yeah.
You're actually going to cause it to grow more because when you prune plants, it signals to them to grow more in that spot. So a lot of times people think they're going to kill it, but really they're probably not. They're actually probably going to cause it to grow more.
And 1/3 of the growth.
Yes, 1/3 every year.
Okay.
And if you don't do that, you probably won't get much. And the reason you prune so much on fruit trees is what you're trying to do is reduce the number of blossoms you get. Now, if you think about that, that sounds a little counterintuitive,
right.
But if you say, okay, the whole reason we're reducing blossoms is we're going to reduce the number of fruit, which sounds even stranger yet, but if you think about it, if you have fewer fruit, the ones you get are going to be larger and better quality. And so instead of having 5,000 little miniature apples all full of worms, you get 500 large apples that probably don't have worms.
And think of the weight.
That's right, and it's
pull it all down.
And that's the thing. And if you go over by the lakeshore this time of year and you see how they've pruned the commercial guys have pruned the trees over there, you look at them and go, how did they even produce anything? But they get great crops every year unless they get a frost. So, these guys know what they're doing, and I think most people don't prune their fruit trees hard enough.
Now, you said this is the last chance to do that. Really, this should have been done, in November or something?
Yeah, November or, even into February, January. That's typically when the commercial guys are doing it, is in January and February. So, as long as they don't have full green buds on them, you're good. So this week is probably going to be about your last opportunity. If you wanted to actually plant something in your garden, a lot of people are planting their onions, they're planting their potatoes, they're planting their all the cold season crops, the peas and things like that. So a lot of those cool season crops are going in right now. So if you have spinach or radishes or some of those things you like, now's a good time to put some of those in. So you can definitely be working in the garden. A lot of people call and ask me about transplanting daylilies or hostas. Great time to dig those up and chop those into pieces and transplant all those. The other big thing this time of year is really get your preen down, get your beds weeded out. If you got mulch beds or anywhere where you got perennials and stuff, get the weeds out of there real soon and then put your preen down because that'll save you a ton of work in another month.
Well, right. This is the time when they start to wake up and this is the time where we can take care of that.
Well, we're going to get this cold snap, and, you talked rain, snow, moisture. Well, the reason we put the crabgrass preventer on now is because that's going to prevent that crabgrass from germinating, but also there's a ton of other weed seeds that germinate at the same time. So if you get your preen on, which the preen works as a pre-emergence just like the crabgrass preventer does, you get those on in those beds, that's going to prevent a lot of those weeds from coming on down the road, and you won't be out there in May and June when the mosquitoes are flying and having to weed this stuff out if you put it on now, because that lasts a couple months.
What are some people tempted to do now that they shouldn't do?
Well, every year I always get people calling me about this time of year saying, well, I'm going to put my tomatoes in my garden. And it's like, warm season crops are not going to do well in cold soil. So unless you've actually put down like landscape fabric and then actually erected a small greenhouse over top of the soil to really get that soil heated up, they're probably not going to do well. They're talking, I think Saturday night we may get down close to 20 degrees,
Right.
I mean, the soil is not going to be warm.
Yeah.
And stuff like peppers and tomatoes, they really want a soil temperature of about 75 degrees. So, the soil temperature is nowhere near that. It's not going to be anywhere near that for a while. Typically, most years you put your tomatoes, peppers, those warm season crops typically go in right around Memorial Day. So you're stretching it if you put them on Mother's Day, and you're really stretching it if you're putting them on in April. So it's not to say people can't and don't and haven't had results, but you really want to be a little judicious about putting that stuff in just yet.
If you use Mother's Day as the marker, that's still 6 weeks away.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the thing. We talked about the last frost being right around May 25th. That's a long time away. We're 2 months almost from that date. So,
that's Memorial Day weekend almost.
That's right. And, if you want to plant your tomatoes inside and plant your peppers inside, certainly you can do that and take them in and out. But that's fine, but it's, a long way away from putting that stuff into your garden.
We wouldn't want to be planted in cold soil, neither do they.
No, there was a very, very famous guy that used to do the garden show, and his theory was that you know when to plant your warm season crops. If you can go out there and pull your pants down and sit on the soil and your butt stays warm, you know that it's time to do it. And so
the butt test.
Yes,
I see.
and I've always found that to be a good thing to go by, So if you can do that, you'll find that works out pretty well. So
sounds like the perfect spot on which to end.
Yes. So that's a good way to determine if your soil's warm enough.
All right, there you go. You had it from Bob right there. Give it a try. Report back to him on Saturday on the Garden Show on WBCK and tell him if you've warmed up yet or not.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob.
All right. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. Bob Coward, Cowardly Gardener, Saturdays on WBCK 820.